Hello. You're just looking for that fruit, aren't you? Ruby is in her mid to late 50s. You can see she's also blind in her left eye here through some damage. She has bits that you see, unfortunately, the traditional medicine trade throughout Asia here. People sometimes cut bits of the elephant to sell for traditional medicine. That's my foot, thank you. But the main thing for Ruby, which you can't really see at the moment because she's covered in mud, is she actually has damage across her back here because she had the logging harness on.
My name's Tien. I'm the local guy here. I'm from Phnom community. I'm working here to be a guide here for almost 5 years now. We like elephants so much because with the Phnom people, when we have elephant, that means they're like a rich guys. My family got like 100 buffalo, 100 cow, and then 3 elephants, like my granddad, not mine, it's just like a whole family, we call like community asset elephant. And so 2 and then died during the Khmer Rouge, with 2 working, and then 1 is passed away, and then on January 2017.
The army did the same thing to captive elephants as they did to people during the Khmer Rouge. They captured them all, made them work. She was lucky, she escaped during that time, and the family refound her after the end of the war. She then worked with that family for a while, and then unluckily for her, as she started to move in and out of Phnom Penh in the late 80s and 90s, you imagine all these people in the capital like, oh my God, there's an elephant walking down the street. So she then started walking up and down the main riverfront every day for a number of years, and then they started riding and charging for that. She would be taught tricks. So she was made to walk on that hard surface. Elephants have naturally their toes with nails on it. They actually essentially walk on their tiptoes, and they have a big fatty pad. If they're walking along, and you imagine you did this every day, walking on concrete with your runners, the bottom of your runners would wear off. So basically that's essentially what happens to most captive elephants held in environments where they're standing on concrete all the time. This is only a captive elephant problem. We can see with Sambo, she actually has damage throughout most of her feet. After years of walking on this concrete, the base of her feet became very, very thin, and she actually then punctured this right foot that we were just working on, and it developed an abscess all the way up into that fatty tissue of that right foot. Sapal here has been working with her for 12 years in Phnom Penh with the owner. When we rescued her at the end of 2014, we're able to continue this treatment that started with her feet in Phnom Penh. And so he's then been learning with experts that we brought in how to then continually treat her feet. This is probably a lifelong treatment. For all of those years and years of damage, it's going to take years to start to get some of that right. For this area here, we have a foot treatment area, but we also have, this is what we call a target training fence or positive reinforcement training. And so Ruby here is going to be doing a little bit of training this morning. And the idea is that Ruby's a very, very traditional Benong elephant. She's been trained to work in the forest, to go gathering things in the forest with her traditional owners. But she's never been trained to, say, work on her feet. If she has a problem with her feet, what we would like to do is ask her to put her foot up so that we can treat that issue. For all of these elephants, like Sambo, coming from Phnom Penh, she has extremely damaged feet. So she's had to have a lot of additional training to then give that treatment. These guys work amazingly with the elephants. But if she has what we call an oh shit problem, oh shit, something's happened to her foot, she doesn't hold it up, we can't access that to treat it. We want to do that in a positive way. So we do positive reinforcement training. You can get an elephant to stand on its head and dance, but that's usually by negative reinforcement. But if I say want to look at this elephant's foot and work on this elephant's foot without having to use a bull hook to whack it, which is what happens a lot across a lot of Asia, I can say, can I have your hand? Because then I'm going to give you a treat. So you want to be able to work with the elephant to then, in case there's an oh shit problem, because if you get to that and then they don't present their foot, then you have a serious issue. Across Asia, you see very similar situations, traditionally held elephants by usually indigenous groups, and then working with their elephants to gather things from the forest, to go to their farm, bring the rice harvest back, all of these kind of traditional roles. The older generation is getting older. They're not able to look after their elephants in the same way. But at the same time, the younger generation also doesn't really want to follow in these traditional roles. We wanted to give these owners an alternative option. Hey, we can bring the elephants in here to sanctuary, they can relax and live back in the forest. The grandson then gets a job where he gets cash to look after his grandfather's elephants. All of these old traditional roles can now be replaced by modern technology. You can drive your motorbike to a farm, a truck can pick up your rice harvest. All of these modern technologies make it much easier for families to work their land. But if you have an elephant, you still have to look after it, it still eats a lot. And unfortunately, this is where more modern jobs come into play. So elephants are hauling logs throughout Myanmar, the timber industry. So there's these modern jobs are actually much more difficult for the elephant because they're made to do then, 10, 12-hour days in these hard labour jobs. So Ruby here has come from an area called Busra. It's one of the most pristine valleys with rich soil that's really good for growing rubber trees. So in the Busra region, there's actually now quite a few different companies with huge plantations. So even when I came up here like 8.5 years ago, there were 6 community elephants left in Busra. There's now none. They've all had to move out because there's more and more plantations. There were 7 different villages in Busra. They've all had to be relocated off their land. They've lost all of their traditional lands and are now living in almost like this one township. So apart from all the social issues that come with that, if you're an elephant owner, it makes it really hard to look after an elephant if she's kept behind your house. You now have to walk for the whole day just to get around the rubber plantations, even to get the elephant to eat. So for Ruby, we got to a point where her family was like, well, we have nowhere to look after this elephant. And she was just living out the back of the village and she actually stomped down a rubber plantation at some point. So we'd been in a year's negotiation with this family. Hey, maybe we bring her into the sanctuary, you still receive an income. Unfortunately, when she stomped down that rubber plantation, they then owed a lot of money. And so we then decided to do a big fundraiser and then we signed her over to the sanctuary here.
We allow the elephant to be in the wild and rest, relaxing, what they want to eat, what they want to go, and they can go. We don't want to rush them too much. We don't go to control them very much. No. I think when an elephant do like this, it's much better. Before that, people quite poor, and then people use for like a tourist elephant, everything. Now, it's a good idea, we don't want to hit elephant. We don't want to use a tourist elephant. We have a lot of truck and motorbike now. We allow the elephant to learn to be and to eat and by themselves like this in the forest. I think now elephants better for me. Before that, I saw a lot of people in Mondulkiri here. People use for tourist elephant. It's so bad, The elephant allow elephant get trekking in the forest many hours. No food, nothing, no time to rest. Much better now. It's really good now. I feel like it here. So everyone want to get a job here. The building work with elephant to be mahood. 10 years ago, we have 3 people started in EBP here. Now we have 60 people.
ខ្ញុំឈ្មោះឆាលភ្លុករស់នៅនៅភូមិត្រំក្នុងខមរមនីស្លាប់រស់នៅនេះជាង30ឆ្នាំហើយប៉ុន្តែខ្ញុំធ្វើការជាមួយអង្គការអ៊ីលីខ្ញុំហៅអង្គការអ៊ីលីពីមុនមក Elephant Project នេះ10ឆ្នាំជាងហើយធ្វើផ្ទះធ្វើអីមើលដំរីភ្ញៀវទៅព្រៃដើរលេងពីមុនអត់ទាន់គេកាប់ព្រៃខ្ញុំដើរលេងនាំភ្ញៀវរហូតមួយទឹកមួយអី
An elephant actually has to eat between 5 to 10% of its body weight every day. Ruby here is about 2,500 kilos. She has to drink about 5% of her body weight as well. So you imagine these elephants across here, Thailand, India, doing the work from dawn until dusk. They sleep between 2 to 3 to 4 hours a night. They just physically don't then have enough hours in the night time to get enough food and water. So when you're looking at an elephant like Ruby here, what you're looking for is first of all that they've had enough to eat. You want their head to be here in line with their shoulders or above, because they're nice and healthy, they're full of water, and their trunk should be active and not laying on the ground. If you see their trunk laying on the ground, it means that they're dehydrated. Every sort of 10 centimetres, that means they're about 100 litres dehydrated. So you're looking for elephants that are active, ears are moving, the trunk's active, it's not laying on the ground, and they're nice and round in the belly. We follow a very hands-off approach. And that basically means, does she really want us invading her personal space? So you're also looking at the elephant and thinking, if I go up to her now, is she going to react, or is she essentially a robot? Looking for an ethical experience, you're basically looking for somewhere that you're not thinking about your experience, you're thinking about the elephant. And for us, that means that these trained professionals, he's working with his elephant, we've done some training, he's now just going to let her go into the forest and look after her for the rest of the day. As a tourist, it's much better to then observe what she would be doing naturally. Maybe she just wants to hang out in the forest. In Mondulkiri, we have one of the largest connected areas of forest left in Southeast Asia. The more that people move and develop an area, the protected areas get smaller, they're becoming islands. And then the animals that live within those areas, they've not just lived in those areas because somebody put a boundary on a map. And 2 years ago, we were involved in a massive rescue of 11 wild elephants that fell into this huge mud pit. Now, if you look at the southern area of the Khao Samar Wildlife Sanctuary, there used to be large areas of forest that they'd moved across into Vietnam. Elephants come back the next year and they're like, whoa, come pop out of the forest and suddenly it's all farmland. We've had, in the last 2 years, more elephant-human conflict because of that encroachment. And just behind us here, as we have more villages develop on this northern boundary, we're seeing elephants for the first time in many years cross these areas as well because of climate change. So drought conditions were present this year. And so in the community that we work with, they've seen elephants closer to the village than some of the elders have ever seen before. We're working with the community. We've spent 9 years helping this Indigenous community get their communal land title, their Indigenous land title, which is about 1,600 hectares. And one of the biggest struggles is, the government still only has limited resources. Back in 2009-10, for the whole of the Samar Park, they literally only had about 13, 15 full-time rangers to patrol this area. This area is 300,000 hectares of protected forest. So back in 2009 and 10, we literally started working with Wildlife Conservation Society, who have partnered with the government for a number of years to help them manage this park, and then just saying, okay, we're just going to start funding your ranger program. So it's very difficult to patrol that large an area, but if we have more teams based around the boundaries of these national parks, we're able to try and stem the flow of poaching and logging coming in and out of these areas. And the other thing is, by creating these ecotourism projects, having the sanctuary here is creating a buffer to this protected area. Seeing the benefit of keeping this forest here, bringing in income, jobs, welfare of these elephants, gives a reason to keep the edge of this forest, and it gives a buffer for that core zone of the protected area to remain there.
100% good for myself, it's very good that people are very happy now. So the family living together, we had a farm, so we have a job, a lot of people get like education. We have like a scholarship program here. Then people have the children who have to support like a uniform, like a backpack, like a book, pen, everything. Yeah, people are very happy. A lot of people go to school now.
So as we finish the treatment and we follow these elephants out, pretty much for the next rest of the day, all of the mahout's job is just following these elephants, making sure that they're okay in the forest, that they're not wandering back into the community and stuff like that. Because realistically, this is the behaviour that we want to see elephants showing. All they want to do is hang out together in their herds and social groups and show these natural behaviours, like a matriarch and an auntie and a whole herd structure. For these elephants, they've not really grown up with that. But what you see is for Sambo, she actually had none of those elephant skills. She didn't know how to trumpet. It's like she's speaking French and Ruby's speaking Benong. She came and you see them walking around the forest and they start to learn from each other, and you can see Sambo when she was first starting to learn how to trumpet was like, and now she's like, and learning like all these elephant behaviors. And that's something that humans, we can't teach them. We can just engineer these environments to have these elephants be able to link back together and learn from each other and stuff. And that's, watching these two, we don't need to go up and invade that space. They're going to learn from each other. We can just support the environment to do that. As humans, do we really need to be hugging a tiger, swimming with a dolphin, riding an elephant? But it goes beyond that. You have to start thinking about the psychological damage. We have an elephant rescued in our Thai sanctuary. She's actually more psychologically stressed because 4 times a day she had to go in the river and be pinned in the river for 20 minutes while people got their experience washing her. Does that activity need to happen with the elephant for the elephant's health and welfare? If not, probably shouldn't do it. As you're looking around Asia and you're looking at places to visit and things like that, essentially what you're looking for is Where is a place that elephants can actually be elephants? And that's what we're trying to do here. As humans, when you're choosing a project, you want to look for something that allows the elephant to A, have enough food and water, B, not be in an environment that is causing them stress. And that includes very close contact, hand feeding, washing, swimming with elephants, the same as riding. It's much better to be able to stand back and observe that natural behaviour develop. The third thing is you want to start looking at these projects and saying, where's my money going? So it's not just that your experience is going to pay for these elephants. You really want to dig deeper and understand a little bit about where the money goes. We can provide sanctuary for these animals for the next 30 to 50 years. But they're not going to save the species. We need to also contribute to protecting the habitat of wild elephants, research, conservation, working with governments to conserve these larger protected areas so that their cousins out there in the wild have a place to live into the future, and that you're safeguarding also the environment here for the local people, because it's these guys that work with these animals that also need support and helping them protect their community forests as a place for these guys to live.